Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're standing in ancient Mesopotamia, between the slow-moving waters of the Tigris and Euphrates, where mud brick cities rise from dust and labour shapes the will of the gods. You're not a king or a priest, just an ordinary stone hauler, one body, among many helping raise a ziggurat step by heavy step. Before we start, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair, plus other sleep tools, in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You wake before the light has decided what shape the day will take. The reed mat beneath you holds the memory of your body better than you do. It bends where you always bend, thins where your weight always settles, and smells faintly of dust, sweat, and the slow rot of river plants. You do not open your eyes right away. There is no advantage in doing so. The darkness is familiar, and the morning will arrive whether you acknowledge it or not. Around you, the city exhales. It is not a sound so much as a loosening. Somewhere, a door of woven reeds creaks open and is gently corrected. A clay jar is set down with care. A cough is swallowed before it becomes a disturbance. Uruk, or one of the many cities pressed into this flat land between rivers, does not wake all at once. It releases people gradually, like breath escaping from between fingers. You lie still, listening to the quiet labour of other mornings beginning. Your body has already risen ahead of you. Your shoulders ache in a way that is neither sharp nor alarming, just present, like the awareness of gravity. Your hands feel thick, stiff at the joints, fingers reluctant to straighten. This is how you know what day it is. Not by the calendar scratched into clay tablets, not by priests watching the stars, but by the condition of your muscles before the sun has arrived to inspect them. You sit up eventually, because lying still too long makes the stiffness worse. The mat whispers as you move. Dust lifts and resettles. Your back straightens in stages, as if assembled rather than stretched. Vertebra by vertebra, clicking into their assigned positions. The air is cool, but not kind. It carries the scent of the river, heavy and brown, mixed with old smoke and damp earth. Mud brick walls surround you, uneven and scarred by years of touch. The city is built from the same ground it stands on. Everything here returns to itself slowly. You rub your eyes with the heels of your hands, pressing gently, not in hope of rest, but habit. Sleep has already given what it was willing to give. Dreams, if they came, did not stay long enough to explain themselves. There is no disappointment in that. Dreams cost energy. You stand. Your feet find the packed earth floor without hesitation. You know where the small cracks are, where the surface dips slightly. You have walked this room in darkness enough times to trust it. Outside, the sky is pale but undecided. The stars have not fully withdrawn, lingering faintly, as if unsure whether they are still required. The horizon holds a thin line of light, flat and distant, stretched across the land like a measured boundary. You step into the narrow street. Mud brick walls rise on either side, close enough to make the passage feel intentional. The city was not designed for wandering. It funnels movement, guides it toward places where work happens and offerings are counted. The ground beneath your feet is cool, still holding the night. You feel it through the thin soles of your sandals, each step grounding you further into the day. Others emerge as you do. Shapes detach themselves from doorways and alleys, bodies moving with the same restrained economy. No one greets anyone. Voices this early would feel excessive. A nod, if that, sometimes not even that. You all know where you are going. Saying it aloud would not improve accuracy. The ziggurat is not visible yet, but it does not need to be. You feel its presence the way you feel weather before it arrives. It occupies the center of the city, not just in space, but in planning, in conversation, in the allocation of grain and labor. It is always under construction. Even when it appears complete, it is only resting. Your pace is steady, not slow, not hurried. The body learns quickly what speed can be maintained without argument. You have learned this speed well. It keeps the breath even and the heart quiet. It wastes nothing. As you walk, the city grows more defined. Smoke begins to rise from cooking fires, thin and cautious at first. Somewhere, dough is being shaped. The soft sound of hands meeting grain. The smell of baking bread drifts briefly, then is lost again in the open air. You register it without stopping. Hunger will be addressed later, in its designated place, at its designated time. You pass a small shrine built into the wall of a house, a shallow niche holding a worn figurine of a god, whose name you know but rarely speak. The figure's features have softened from years of touch. People brush past it on their way to work, leaving behind the oils of their hands. It watches everyone without preference. You do not stop, the gods will be encountered again, higher up. The ground begins to slope almost imperceptibly. Ramps, wide and deliberate, ease the movement of materials toward the center of the city. They have been worn smooth by feet, sledges, baskets, and the constant negotiation between weight and friction. You feel the incline in your calves before you consciously note it. The muscles tighten slightly, adjusting their expectations. Ahead, the outline of the Ziggurat begins to take shape against the lightening sky. It is massive, even in silhouette. A stepped mountain of mud brick and stone rising where the land itself refuses to do so. Each tier recedes upward, drawing the eye toward a point that remains distant, no matter how long you look. The structure does not glow with holiness. It simply exists, solid and patient, absorbing the early light without reaction. It will be taller tomorrow than it was yesterday. You know this not because you have measured it, but because it has always been true. The workyard spreads out at its base, an organized sprawl of ramps, platforms, and staging areas. Stone blocks lie in groups, sorted by size and shape. Some are still cool from the night. Others retain a faint warmth, as if the day before never fully let go of them. Overseers are already present. They stand where they always stand, positioned to see without moving much themselves. Their posture is practiced, neither rigid nor relaxed. They hold tablets, ropes, counting sticks, tools of management rather than labor. When they speak, it is in measured phrases, not raised voices. There is no urgency yet. Urgency comes later, when the sun is higher and mistakes cost more effort to correct. You take your place among the others, assigned to stone hauling. The group is not fixed. People shift in and out as bodies allow, as injuries demand reassignment, as someone is absent and not replaced right away. Today the faces are familiar enough. You recognize hands more than names. A stone is assigned to you, not ceremonially. Someone gestures, someone else notes it, and suddenly it is your responsibility. The block sits on a wooden sledge, edges rough, surface pitted. You run your hand over it briefly, feeling the grain, the small imperfections that will scrape skin if you are careless. The stone does not resist your touch. It does not acknowledge it either. You position yourself. Hands find their places along the rope. Your grip tightens automatically, fingers settling into a tension they know well. The rope smells of fiber and old sweat. It has been repaired many times, spliced and knotted, a history of strain held together by attention. The sky continues its slow brightening. The sun has not yet cleared the horizon, but its presence is implied now, a pressure rather than a sight. The air begins to change, coolness thinning, replaced by the promise of heat that will arrive in stages. A signal is given, not loud, just enough. You lean forward, and the rope grows heavy in your hands. The stone responds reluctantly at first, then yields, sliding a fraction of an inch. Wood scrapes against packed earth. The sound is dull, almost polite. You take your first steps of the day with weight attached to you, and the work begins before the sun fully notices you are there. Your breath settles into rhythm. Inhale through the nose, slow. Exhale through the mouth, controlled. The body understands this pattern. It has practiced it for years. There is comfort in the predictability of strain applied evenly. As you move, you become aware of the smallest details. The way dust rises and clings to damp skin, the faint vibration travelling through the rope into your arms, the sound of other sledges moving nearby, a low chorus of effort without melody. Thoughts arrive, but they do not linger. There is no room for them to stretch out. They pass through like birds, briefly casting shadows. You are aware of your place in the line, of the distance ahead, of the angle of the ramp. Nothing more is required. Above you, the Ziggurat waits, unchanged by your awareness of it. Stone by stone, it accepts what is brought to it. You do not imagine its completion. That is not your task. For now, the morning is enough. The day has begun, even if the sun has not yet claimed responsibility for it. Your feet continue to move, even when you stop thinking about them. The streets stretch out ahead in familiar lines, narrow corridors of mud brick and shadow that guide you forward without asking. Dust coats everything evenly, softening edges, muting colour, turning the city into a series of variations on brown and grey. It settles on your ankles as you walk, clings to the hems of garments, fills the shallow grooves, worn into the road by years of passing bodies and dragging loads. No one sweeps it away at this hour. It belongs here as much as you do. Others walk beside you, behind you, ahead of you. The spacing between bodies feels instinctive, learned over time, close enough to move as a group, far enough to avoid unnecessary contact. You recognize the sound of their footsteps without looking. Leather on packed earth. Bare soles in places where sandals have failed. The rhythm is uneven but consistent, a collective pace that does not require agreement. Faces remain mostly forward. Eyes drift occasionally to doorways, to the ground, to the sky, as it lightens in careful increments. There is no conversation. Words would sit heavily in the air, drawing attention to themselves. Silence moves more efficiently. The city smells awake now. Smoke thickens as fires are fed. The sourness of refuse left overnight mingles with the sweeter scent of grain being ground somewhere out of sight. Water sloshes in jars as someone rinses a threshold. A child cries briefly, then quiets. Life continues in manageable fragments, each sound distinct but unremarkable. You pass workshops still shuttered, their tools resting in shadow. A carpenter's yard, where wood shavings lie untouched. A potter's space with rows of vessels cooling from yesterday's firing, their surfaces catching the first light. These places will come alive later, when hands other than yours begin their own repetitions. For now, they wait, just as the Ziggurat waits. The path widens gradually, streets feeding into larger avenues designed for movement rather than dwelling. Here, the city opens itself, allowing processions, carts, animals and labour to flow toward the centre. You feel the change in scale immediately. The sky seems larger. The air moves more freely. Your shoulders loosen slightly as the walls pull back. Not because the work will be easier, but because the city has decided there is no more reason to confine you. From here on, direction is obvious. The Ziggurat becomes visible in full now, not just as an outline, but as a mass with texture and depth. Its stepped sides catch the light unevenly, each tier revealing scars of construction. New brick sits beside older brick, the seams visible if you know how to look. Ramps cling to its sides like temporary thoughts, paths meant to be erased once they have served their purpose. It does not dominate the skyline through height alone. It does so by certainty. Nothing else in the city competes with it. Houses crouch low, palaces spread wide rather than tall. Only the Ziggurat insists on rising. You walk toward it without urgency. The distance shortens at a predictable rate. You have walked this way enough times to know how long your breath will hold steady, when your calves will begin to register the incline, when the ground will change underfoot from loosely packed earth to the harder surface maintained by constant traffic. The people around you adjust unconsciously as well. Postures shift, strides shorten slightly. Everyone is preparing, whether they acknowledge it or not. The body does not like surprises, and the work ahead contains enough of those already. As you approach the workyard, the sounds change. The city's softer noises fade, replaced by the low mechanical language of labour beginning. Wood knocks against wood. Rope slides and tightens. Someone clears their throat and spits dust aside. Tools are set down, picked up, set down again, as if testing their willingness to cooperate. Overseers are more numerous here, their presence diffused rather than concentrated. They move slowly, hands behind backs or resting on hips, eyes scanning without expression. Their garments are cleaner, their movements less economical. They do not need to conserve themselves in the same way. Their work is measured in counts, not in strain. You do not resent them. Resentment requires energy and imagination. Instead, you accept their existence as part of the structure, like the ramps and the ropes and the stones themselves. Systems require watching as much as they require lifting. The yard is already organised. Stones lie where they were left the day before, some marked with faint lines or symbols scratched into their surfaces. Not decoration, just instruction. Where to go, how to turn, which face must remain visible. The stone does not care. It will comply with any designation given enough force. You find your place among the haulers almost without looking. Your body recognizes the spacing, the angle at which you will pull, the way the rope will bite into your palms if you do not adjust your grip just so. These are details you no longer consider consciously. They belong to a part of you that has learned through repetition rather than explanation. The ground beneath your feet feels firmer here, compressed by thousands of identical mornings. It holds you steady. There is comfort in that, a small assurance that at least the surface will not betray you. As the sun finally clears the horizon, its light spreads across the yard, catching on dust, and turning it briefly into something almost luminous. The heat does not arrive all at once. It builds patiently, layer by layer, like the monument itself. You feel the warmth touch the back of your neck, not unpleasant yet, just noticeable. A reminder that time is advancing whether you measure it or not. A signal passes through the group, not spoken, a shift in stance, a tightening of hands on rope. The stone assigned to you waits on its sledge, indifferent, heavy, familiar. You step into position, aligning yourself with the others, careful not to crowd, careful not to leave too much space. Your breath deepens. You feel your weight settle into your feet, distributing itself evenly. The rope grows taut, vibrating faintly as others take up slack. For a moment, everything holds still, balanced between intention and action. Then you lean forward. The stone resists at first, as it always does. Not stubbornly, just honestly. Its mass is a fact, not an opinion. Wood creaks, fibres strain. Your shoulders engage, muscles warming as they remember their purpose. The sledge moves. It slides only a little at first, enough to confirm that cooperation is possible. The ground offers just enough friction to make the effort meaningful. You adjust your grip slightly, shifting pressure from fingers to palm, saving strength where you can. As you move, the sounds of the yard settle into a steady pattern. The scrape of wood, the soft grunt of exertion, the measured calls of overseers, counting steps, distances, angles. No one shouts. Shouting would waste breath and attention. The work proceeds best when everything remains controlled. You do not look up at the ziggurat now. There is no need, it will still be there when you arrive at the base of the ramp. It is not going anywhere. Patience is built into its design. The walk toward it continues, no longer just through streets, but through purpose. Each step brings you closer, not to an end, but to continuation. Stone will be lifted, placed, and left behind. Another will take its place. The process does not hurry itself. Your thoughts narrow further, focusing on immediate requirements. Maintain pace, keep balance, breathe steadily. The future of the structure, the favour of the gods, the meaning assigned to all of this exists somewhere beyond your concern. Those ideas belong to others, spoken in temples and recorded on tablets. Your responsibility is simpler. Move the stone forward, do not drop it, do not fall. The sun climbs higher, unnoticed except for the way it draws moisture from your skin. Sweat begins to form, mixing with dust to create a thin film that marks you as part of the day's labour. It will thicken later. For now, it is just enough to remind you that the body is working as intended. Around you, the line advances. Together you carry the morning toward the waiting structure. Footsteps blending into routine, effort dissolving into repetition. The ziggurat remains ahead, unchanged, patient, and in no hurry at all. The stone settles into your hands the way it always does, without ceremony and without acknowledgement. Its surface is uneven, pitted by quarry tools and weather. Edges soften just enough to be deceptive. In the early light, it has already begun to warm, holding the promise of heat rather than its full burden. Your palms press against it, skin meeting mineral, and there is a brief exchange of sensation. Roughness registers, weight announces itself. Then the moment passes and the stone becomes only what it is meant to be moved. You adjust your grip, not because the stone asks you to, but because your hands have learned which angles reduce abrasion. Fingers spread, thumbs brace, the muscles in your forearms tighten in quiet agreement. There is no strain yet, only readiness. The sun remains low, but it no longer feels distant. Its light slips sideways across the workyard, catching on dust motes and the faint sheen of sweat already forming along your hairline. Shadows stretch long and thin, breaking across ramps and platforms, like dark lines drawn for measurement. They will shorten soon. You know this without looking. The stone does not care. It rests against the sledge with complete indifference, its mass fully contained within itself. It does not anticipate movement. It does not prepare. It will resist when resistance is required and yield when force outweighs friction. This is not cooperation. It is physics, practiced daily. A signal passes through the group again, subtle and efficient. The rope tightens. The fibers press into your skin, familiar pressure settling into the soft parts of your palms. You lean forward, shifting your weight from heel to the balls of your feet, letting gravity assist where it can. The stone moves, not gracefully, not smoothly. It slides with a sound that belongs to this place, wood against earth, a low scrape that vibrates faintly through your arms. The vibration is not unpleasant. It is information. It tells you how much effort is required, how evenly the weight is distributed, whether the path ahead will argue or comply. You take a step, then another. The movement settles into rhythm quickly, your body aligning itself with the task as if it has been waiting for this exact demand. Breath in, breath out. The pattern establishes itself without instruction. As you walk, you feel the stone's presence more through absence than contact. It does not push back emotionally. It does not respond to fatigue or carelessness. When your grip slips slightly, it does not forgive. When you correct it, it does not thank you. It simply remains. This is perhaps its greatest quality, reliability without interest. The warmth of the stone increases as the sun climbs, though it has not yet reached its full insistence. The heat spreads slowly through the surface, seeping into your skin where contact is longest. It is not enough to burn, only enough to remind you that the day is advancing. You will feel it more later, when shade becomes a memory rather than an option. Your hands darken with dust and sweat, the mixture filling the lines of your palms, tracing patterns you have never studied. They look older this way, more permanent. You wonder briefly how many hands have looked like this before yours, how many will after. The thought does not linger, it does not change the weight. Around you, others move in parallel silence. Each hauler manages their own relationship with their assigned stone. No one compares burdens. There is no benefit in doing so. Comparison adds a layer of thought that slows the work. An overseer walks nearby, counting softly, marking progress with notches on a tablet. The sound of the stylus scratching clay is faint but distinct, a different kind of friction. His eyes flick toward the line, assessing alignment, spacing, pace. He does not look at faces. Faces are not variables that require adjustment. You feel the incline begin, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The ramp rises toward the next level of the structure, its surface smoothed by countless identical ascents. Your calves tighten, your thighs respond. The muscles along your back engage more fully, distributing the effort upward. The stone seems heavier here, not because it has changed, but because gravity has become more insistent. You lean further forward, trusting the rope and the coordination of those beside you. The line adjusts together, small shifts made instinctively to keep the load balanced. The sun glints briefly off the stone surface, revealing flecks of mineral embedded within it. You notice them in passing, small points of light that will disappear once the stone is set into the larger mass. They are details no one will see again. The thought occurs, uninvited and unimportant, that the stone will outlast you. Not in a dramatic way, simply as a matter of time. Long after your hands have lost their shape, long after your name has thinned into nothing, it will still be here, part of something taller and more permanent than any single life. The stone does not register this comparison. It does not store impressions. It does not accumulate gratitude or resentment. Each time you lift it, it is the first time as far as it is concerned. Your hands could be replaced tomorrow by others identical in effort, and the stone would not notice the difference. There is a strange efficiency in that. No history, no memory, no obligation. You reach the platform where the stone is meant to rest, at least for now. The ramp levels out, and the resistance changes again. The sledge slides more easily, the sound softening. A call is made, measured and calm, indicating where to stop. You slow your pace, easing the stone into position. The rope slackens slightly as the weight transfers from movement to rest. Your arms lower a fraction, tension releasing in increments rather than all at once. Sudden relief would be unwelcome. The body prefers gradual transitions. The stone settles. It does not announce its arrival. It simply occupies the space prepared for it. The surface beneath it bears the mark of contact, a faint scuff that will be covered by the next layer of dust, the next movement, the next assignment. You step back, hands dropping to your sides. They throb gently now, a steady pulse that matches your heartbeat. You flex your fingers slowly, encouraging circulation, pressing thumb to palm in a pattern that feels reassuringly familiar. The stone remains where it is placed, already forgotten by the system that required it to move. Another stone waits below. Another rope will tighten. The process continues without pause. You glance briefly at your hands. The skin is reddened, the lines deeper with grime. Small abrasions sting faintly, not enough to demand attention. They will be noticed later, perhaps while washing, perhaps while lying down. For now, they are part of the background. The sun climbs higher, and with it the warmth spreads more evenly across the yard. The early coolness retreats, leaving behind a steady heat that settles into muscles and joints. Sweat darkens fabric. Dust adheres more readily. You return to the ramp without instruction. Your body knows where to go. Another stone is already being positioned onto a sledge, its edges catching the light in the same unremarkable way. You place your hands against it again, repeating the contact as if it were new. The stone accepts you without recognition. As you lean into the rope once more, you understand, without needing to articulate it, that nothing about this exchange is personal. The stone does not take from you. It does not give. It merely requires. And you, for reasons that do not need to be revisited each morning, supply what is required. The work continues, stone after stone, hand after hand, memory accumulating only where flesh allows it. The voices arrive without urgency. They do not rise or cut through the air. They move across it the way dust does, settling where they are meant to settle. You hear them as you pull, as you step, as the rope tightens and loosens in your hands. Numbers spoken evenly, short phrases repeated with careful sameness, instructions shaped by long use rather than thought. Steady, hold, now. Each word falls into place like a stone set correctly the first time. No emphasis is wasted, no syllable reaches for authority it does not need. These voices have learned that volume does not increase obedience, only fatigue. They are designed to conserve. You do not look toward the overseers when they speak. There is no requirement to do so. Their presence is felt more than seen, a steady pressure at the edges of your attention. They stand where lines of sight meet, where ramps converge, where work either flows or hesitates. From there, they speak just enough to keep it moving. The sound of counting becomes part of the rhythm of your breathing. 1, 2, 3, pause, again. The numbers do not hurry. They are not meant to. They exist to mark distance, to ensure that no one steps too soon or lags too far behind. They are a system layered gently over the labour, invisible unless something goes wrong. Your body responds to them without argument. When a count reaches its end, your muscles adjust automatically. When a pause is called, you hold without resentment. Holding is easier than pulling. It gives the body a moment to redistribute weight, to let strain settle into places that have learned to carry it. The overseer's words are familiar enough now that they blend with other sounds. Rope fibres creaking, wood scraping stone, breath drawn in through clenched teeth. All of it merges into a single low-register hum, the sound of a large thing being assembled from smaller, obedient motions. You notice how little variation there is in the language. The same phrases return again and again, unchanged by weather, by heat, by the number of bodies present. Even mistakes are addressed with the same vocabulary. A misstep does not provoke anger, only correction. Again, not yet there. The words do not judge. They do not praise. They simply redirect. There is something almost comforting in this restraint. Nothing is expected of you beyond compliance. You are not asked how you feel. You are not asked yet what you think. Your interior life is irrelevant to the task, and therefore left undisturbed. You lean into the rope as the count begins again. The stone responds as it always does, sliding forward in reluctant agreement. Your shoulders engage, muscles warming further, a dull ache settling into them that promises to deepen as the day progresses. The ache is predictable. Predictability makes it manageable. A voice marks the incline ahead. You adjust before the slope announces itself to your legs. This foresight saves effort. It is one of the overseer's more useful skills, the ability to anticipate resistance before it manifests fully. They have learned the ramps the way you have learned the rope, through repetition rather than study. As you climb, the counts slow slightly, not out of mercy, but accuracy. Timing changes when gravity asserts itself more forcefully. The voices adapt without comment, their cadence shifting by fractions of a second. You match it instinctively. The stone reaches the platform again. The final count is given, and you ease it into place with the others. The rope slackens. Your arms lower. Blood returns to your hands with a familiar tingling that fades almost as soon as you notice it. Clear. You step back, making room for the next movement. Another group advances. Another stone takes its turn. The voices continue, threading their way through the yard, touching everything without lingering. You become aware of how these voices shape the day more than the sun does. The sun dictates heat and shadow, but the voices determine when effort is applied and when it is withheld. They create boundaries invisible but firm, preventing chaos without drawing attention to themselves. You wonder briefly if the overseers ever notice the repetition, if they ever tire of hearing their own words return to them unchanged. The thought dissolves quickly. Wondering about that kind of fatigue leads nowhere useful. An overseer passes closer this time. You catch a glimpse of his face in profile. It is lined, not deeply, but enough to suggest years spent watching rather than lifting. His eyes move constantly, scanning alignment, posture, spacing. They do not linger on individuals. He is reading patterns, not people. When he speaks, his voice is neither harsh nor kind. It is accurate. Accuracy is its own tone. You shift position slightly as instructed. The adjustment is small, but it changes the way the weight distributes across the line. The rope bites less sharply into your palm. Someone beside you exhales more easily. No one acknowledges the improvement aloud. Efficiency does not require celebration. The day continues to build itself around these measured exchanges. Time passes not in hours, but in sequences of commands and responses. Pull, hold, set, return. Each cycle completes itself neatly before the next begins. You feel yourself becoming more attuned to the voices than to your own thoughts. They occupy the foreground of your attention, leaving little space for reflection. This narrowing is not unpleasant. It simplifies things. Sweat runs more freely now, tracing paths down your temples, along your spine. Dust adheres to it, creating a thin crust that stiffens fabric and skin alike. The heat presses down steadily, not yet oppressive, but insistent enough to make rest feel hypothetical. The voices do not change with the temperature. They remain even, unbothered by the conditions they oversee. This consistency is deliberate. To acknowledge the heat would be to introduce variables that cannot be managed with counting alone. You begin to recognize subtle differences between overseers, not in what they say, but in timing. One pauses a fraction longer before a lift, another counts more quickly on level ground. These distinctions are small, but your body notes them and adjusts, learning each cadence the way it learned the feel of different ropes. None of this is discussed. Knowledge accumulates quietly, stored in muscle and reflex rather than language. A stone shifts unexpectedly, its edge catching on a slight rise in the ramp. The movement jolts the line, sending a ripple of tension through your arms. Before alarm can surface, a voice intervenes. "Hold!" Everyone freezes. The stone stops. The rope strains but holds. Your muscles lock, stabilizing the weight. The pause lasts only a moment. Another instruction follows. Lower slowly. You comply, easing the stone back until it rests more securely. The potential problem dissolves without escalation. No one raises their voice. No one assigns blame. The system absorbs the error and corrects itself. You resume movement as if nothing occurred. In a sense, nothing did. The voices continue, uninterrupted, as reliable as the ramps and platforms they govern. They will sound the same at midday. They will sound the same when the sun begins its descent. If the day stretches long, they will stretch with it, unchanging. As you return to the base of the ramp for another stone, you realize how much of yourself has been shaped by this measured speech. Your own internal rhythm has aligned with it. You think in counts now, in distances, in manageable segments of effort. Life, reduced to instructions simple enough to follow without question. The stone waits again. The rope waits. The voices hover, ready to place their gentle weight on the air. You step forward, hands rising to meet the familiar roughness, already listening for the next count. The day stops, announcing itself at some point. It does not end or pause, it simply loses its edges. What had once felt like morning becomes something broader and heavier, a stretch of time without clear boundaries. The sun climbs higher, but you do not track its movement by looking up. You feel it instead, settling into your shoulders, pressing gently but persistently against the back of your neck. Stone meets ramp, ramp meets platform, platform waits, the sequence repeats without commentary. Each motion fits into the next, with the quiet inevitability of something practiced too often to require thought. Your hands lift, pull, release. Your feet advance, stop, retreat. The rope tightens, slackens, tightens again. Sweat forms, runs, dries, then forms again in slightly different places. The ground beneath you changes texture as you move between areas of the workyard. Packed earth gives way to smoother surfaces where traffic is heaviest. Mud appears in shallow patches where water has been spilled, darkening the dust and turning it tacky underfoot. Your sandals pick it up and carry it forward, leaving faint impressions that blur as others step through them. Mud has its own way of marking time. It begins soft, pliable, easily displaced. Later, it stiffens under the sun, cracking into thin lines that crumble at a touch. By the end of the day, it will be dust again, indistinguishable from what it was before. You do not need to witness this transformation to know it happens. It always does. Sweat behaves differently. It refuses to disappear entirely. It collects along the spine, beneath the arms, at the bend of the knees. It soaks into fabric and stays there, heavy and warm. When it dries, it leaves salt behind, a faint crust that stiffens cloth and skin alike. The residue accumulates gradually, a record of effort written in places no one reads. You no longer think of the work as a series of tasks. It has become a condition, like weather. You move within it rather than through it. Each stone feels similar to the last, not because they are identical, but because your body has stopped distinguishing between them. Weight is weight, resistance is resistance. The counts continue, steady and unbroken. They arrive when needed, fade when not. Sometimes they seem to stretch, sometimes to compress, but you do not measure the difference. Your breathing adapts, your muscles adjust. The system absorbs variation without complaint. You notice that you are no longer aware of hunger, not because it has vanished, but because it has been postponed. It waits somewhere below your attention, patient and dull. Thirst registers more clearly, a dryness at the back of the throat, a thickening of saliva. You swallow and keep moving. Water will come when it is scheduled to come. The air grows denser as heat settles into it. Movement feels slightly more deliberate now, as if each action must push through an invisible resistance. Dust hangs longer after being disturbed, drifting slowly rather than falling. It coats your eyelashes, your eyebrows, the inside of your nose. You breathe through it without reacting. This is not discomfort, it is environment. The ziggurat looms closer with each completed cycle, though its presence no longer inspires any particular thought. It is simply there, receiving what is brought to it. Its surfaces catch the light differently now, shadows shrinking, lines becoming sharper. You see the texture of the brickwork more clearly, the slight variations in colour where newer material meets older layers. You place another stone, it settles into its assigned position, aligning with those beside it. Mortar will come later. For now, gravity and careful placement are enough. The stone does not ask what comes next. You step away, another group steps in. The flow continues. Time does not announce itself with bells or calls. There are no markers to divide it into useful segments. Instead, it stretches, elastic and quiet, shaped by repetition rather than measurement. The hours are not counted, they are inhabited. Your muscles begin to ache more noticeably now, not sharply, but with a deep, spreading insistence. It starts in the lower back, a dull pressure that radiates outward. The thighs follow, then the shoulders. Each ache blends into the next, until they form a single, continuous sensation. You do not resist it. Resistance would require energy better spent elsewhere. Instead, you adjust slightly, shifting posture, redistributing strain. These adjustments are small and frequent, almost imperceptible to anyone watching. They are how you continue. Sweat runs into your eyes. You blink it away, smearing dust across your lashes. Vision blurs for a moment, then clears enough. Precision is less important than persistence. The margins for error here are wide, managed by the structure itself. The voices continue their measured cadence, unchanged by the heat or the lengthening day. They do not hurry you. They do not slow you down. They exist alongside the work, rather than above it, guiding without interfering. You begin to feel the weight of time more than the weight of stone, not as boredom but as accumulation. Each completed motion adds itself to the last, layering effort upon effort. There is no sense of progress in the way a finished object provides. Progress here is vertical, incremental, almost invisible, unless you step back far enough to see the whole. You do not step back. Instead, you focus on what is immediately in front of you. The rope in your hands, the ground beneath your feet, the sound of your own breath, steady and unremarkable. This narrowing of attention is not enforced. It happens naturally, a response to sustained demand. At some point, you become aware that the sun has reached its highest position. The shadows are shortest now, clustered tightly beneath bodies and objects. The light feels more direct, less forgiving. Heat presses down rather than arriving from an angle. The work does not pause, it adjusts. Movements become slightly more deliberate. Counts stretch just enough to accommodate heavier breathing. Someone wipes their face with the back of their hand, leaving a darker smear across already darkened skin. No one comments. Mud sticks more stubbornly now, clinging to sandals and hems. Sweat no longer evaporates as quickly. It lingers, making fabric heavier, skin slicker. The rope feels rougher against your palms, its fibers raised and abrasive. You flex your fingers briefly between pulls, encouraging blood flow. The sensation returns slowly, tingling and warm. You close your hands again, ready. Another stone, another ascent, another placement. The Ziggurat accepts it all without variation. Its growing mass absorbs effort silently, transforming individual exertions into something collective and impersonal. It does not display gratitude, it does not promise completion. You realize dimly that this lack of acknowledgement is part of what allows the work to continue. If each stone demanded recognition, the process would collapse under the weight of meaning. Instead, everything remains procedural, manageable, stripped of unnecessary significance. Sweat drips from your chin and darkens the dust below. The spot disappears almost immediately as feet pass through it. The mark you leave is temporary, the work is not. Your thoughts drift briefly, unanchored, then settle again into the rhythm of movement. There is no room for anticipation. There is no benefit in reflection. The present moment contains all necessary information. Stone meets ramp, ramp meets platform, sweat meets dust. The hours continue to take shape around you, indistinct and uncounted, endured not through resolve but through repetition. You move within them, shaped by them, carrying their weight as steadily as you carry the stone. The climb begins to assert itself more clearly now, not all at once, not with drama, but with a gradual insistence that settles into your legs and back. Each ascent asks a little more than the last, not because the stone has changed, but because the structure has grown. The ground you start from remains the same. The destination has simply moved farther away. You do not need anyone to explain what this means. The arrangement is visible in the way the ramps stretch upward, in the narrowing of platforms as they rise, in the thinning of air that feels warmer and less forgiving the higher you go. Height is not neutral here, it is deliberate. The gods are said to live above. This is not announced to you in speeches or inscriptions. It is built into the city itself. Every step upward carries the implication. Every stone placed higher than the last reinforces the idea that proximity to the sky carries meaning. The Ziggurat does not argue this point, it embodies it. You pull again, leaning forward as the incline steepens. Your calves tighten, muscles drawing firm, under skin slick with sweat. The rope presses deeper into your palms. The fibers rougher now that moisture has softened them. The sensation borders on pain but does not cross into it. Pain would demand attention. This remains manageable. The sun presses down from above, its position unambiguous. Shadows cling tightly to the base of the structure, leaving the ramps exposed. There is less relief here, fewer places for the body to hide from the light. The heat feels more concentrated, as if height has brought you closer to its source. You notice how the overseers position themselves differently at these levels. They stand where they can see both up and down, monitoring the flow of movement between tiers. Their voices travel farther here, unobstructed by walls, carrying counts and corrections across open space. Their tone remains unchanged. Height does not alter it. The words are the same ones used below, delivered with the same measured calm. Whatever significance the upper levels hold, it does not require a different vocabulary. You reach a platform and ease the stone into place. The effort required to stop it feels greater now, the weight pulling forward with a quiet determination. You brace, adjust, and settle it carefully, mindful of the edge. A misplacement here would require more correction, more labour to undo. The stone comes to rest. From this vantage, the city looks different. Not grander, not smaller, just rearranged. The mud brick houses flatten into patterns. Streets become lines rather than corridors. Movement below appears slower, less urgent, though you know it is not. Perspective alters perception without changing reality. You do not linger on the view. Looking down invites thoughts that do not assist with balance. You step back, making room for the next stone, the next ascent. As you descend the ramp to retrieve another load, the difference in elevation registers again in your joints. Going down demands its own attention. Knees absorb more impact. Feet must be placed carefully to avoid slipping on dust-polished surfaces. The body adjusts, shifting its strategy without instruction. At the base, the heat feels heavier, pooled rather than dispersed. The air is thicker here, filled with dust and the collective breath of many bodies. You inhale and exhale slowly, letting your lungs adapt before taking hold of the rope again. Another stone waits. It is slightly larger than the last, its edges less cooperative. You test its balance briefly, applying pressure to gauge how it will respond. It does not respond. It simply waits to be moved. You take your position, listening for the count. When it comes, you lean in unison with the others. The stone moves reluctantly, then settles into motion. The ramp ahead promises effort. You accept this without reaction. As you climb again, you feel the cumulative effect of height. The muscles in your legs burn more readily now, fatigue rising faster than it did earlier. Sweat drips freely, no longer evaporating between steps. Your breath deepens, each inhale slightly more deliberate than the last. There is no ceremony marking this increased demand, no acknowledgement that the work has become harder. Difficulty is not announced, it is simply encountered. You think briefly of the temple at the top, the space reserved for priests and offerings. You have never been there, you will not be there today. The work you do exists below that threshold, supporting it without crossing into it. This separation feels intentional. The higher you carry the stone, the clearer the boundary becomes. The gods are not meant to be reached by those who haul. They are meant to be approached by those who speak. The stone does not care about this distinction. It will sit wherever it is placed, whether beneath the open sky or within the shadowed interior of a shrine. Its role does not change with elevation. Yours does. Each ascent reinforces the order of things. You lift, others instruct. Others still perform rituals above, unseen. The structure itself enforces these roles more effectively than any decree. You place another stone, higher than the last. The view shifts again, subtly altered by the added elevation. The city recedes a little more, its details blurring into a uniform expanse of earth and movement. Your arms tremble slightly as you release the rope, not from weakness alone, but from the sustained tension of climbing. You shake them out gently, careful not to waste motion. The tremor subsides. The overseer's voices float up to this level, marking the next sequence. They sound the same as they did below, unaffected by distance or height. Authority, it seems, does not require proximity to the gods. You descend once more, each step measured. The ramp feels longer now, not because it has grown, but because your body has less to give it without protest. The protest remains internal, a quiet negotiation between effort and endurance. At the base, you pause for a moment longer than before, drawing in air, letting your pulse slow just enough. No one comments. Pauses are built into the system, as long as they do not interrupt its flow. You return to the rope. The next stone is already being positioned. Its surface is warm, almost hot now, absorbing and holding the sun's attention. You place your hands against it, feeling the heat seep into your skin. The sensation is sharp at first, then dulls as your nerves adapt. As you prepare to lift, you become aware, not for the first time, that each stone you raise upward is a quiet acknowledgement of hierarchy. The act itself contains the message: higher is holier, lower is labour. You do not argue this. Argument would require language, and this understanding has no words. It exists in the angle of ramps, in the distance between ground and shrine, in the way your legs ache more with each ascent. The count begins again. You lean forward, adding your efforts to the collective push, sending another piece of the earth upward toward a place you will never stand. The gods remain above, silent and unseen, while the stones rise steadily to meet them. At some point, the light changes in a way that does not announce itself. It does not arrive suddenly. It does not cast a new colour. It simply removes contrast. You notice it first in the absence of relief. The places where shade used to gather no longer offer anything different from the open ground. Walls, ramps, bodies, stones. Everything is exposed equally, flattened beneath the sun's steady attention. The sun is above you now, not angled, not searching. It presses straight down, indifferent and exact. Shadows shrink until they are barely recognizable, clinging tightly beneath feet and edges, thin enough to be ignored. The ground looks bleached, its texture simplified by brightness. Dust no longer drifts lazily. It hangs briefly, then settles almost immediately, too heavy with heat to wander. You feel the change in your body before you think about it. The warmth that had been building now feels complete, settled into place. It sits on your shoulders and spine, spreads across your chest, seeps into your legs. Sweat no longer surprises you. It is constant, a presence rather than a response. Your shirt clings to your back, darkened and stiff where salt has begun to dry. Each movement pulls fabric slightly, reminding you of its weight. When you lift your arms, the cloth resists, then yields, damp and warm. The stone beneath your hands is hot now, not burning but unmistakably alive with heat. It radiates upward, meeting the heat from above, trapping your palms between two sources that do not negotiate. You shift your grip instinctively, minimizing contact where you can, spreading pressure across more surface area. The stone allows this. It does not care how you touch it. The counts continue. They sound slightly farther away now, not because the overseers have moved, but because your attention has narrowed. The voices still arrive when needed, steady and precise, but they do not occupy as much space inside you. They float at the edges, functional and distant. You pull again. Your breathing has changed. It is deeper, slower, more deliberate. Each inhale feels heavier, as if the air itself has gained weight. You draw it in through your nose, warm and dry, and release it through your mouth, feeling it leave your body hotter than it arrived. The ramp feels longer, even though it is not. The distance between each step seems to stretch, not physically, but perceptually. Time behaves differently under this light. It does not move faster or slower. It simply thickens. Movement continues around you, but it feels muted, as if wrapped in cloth. The scrape of sledges is duller. The sound of feet striking the ground loses sharpness. Even voices seem softened, absorbed by the heat before they can travel far. You realize that your thoughts have quieted, not stopped, just thinned. Ideas still form, but they do not linger long enough to develop edges. They rise briefly, then dissolve back into sensation. Heat, weight, breath, step. This quiet is not peaceful, it is functional. The body, faced with sustained demand, has learned to reduce internal noise. Anything not directly related to movement is set aside. Memory, speculation, emotion, all unnecessary here, all temporarily suspended. You place another stone. Your arms shake slightly as you guide it into position. The tremor is subtle, controlled. You brace, adjust, and let the weight settle. The vibration passes through you, then fades. When you step back, the platform offers no relief. It is as exposed as the ramp, its surface warm underfoot. You glance briefly toward the edge, where the city stretches out below, washed in the same relentless light. From here, the city looks paused. Movement is still happening, but it is harder to perceive. People move more slowly now, conserving effort. Animals seek what little shade remains, pressing close to walls, to carts, to anything that breaks the light even slightly. You do not search for shade yourself. There is none that would make a difference. You stand where you are meant to stand, waiting for the next instruction, letting the heat settle into you fully. Sweat runs down your temples and drips from your chin, darkening the dust at your feet. The mark disappears almost immediately, absorbed and erased. The ground does not record you. Your hands sting faintly where the rope has rubbed them raw. The sensation registers, then is filed away. Pain, like thought, has been reduced to a background hum. It exists, but it does not interrupt. Another stone is ready. You return to the base of the ramp, your steps careful now, not rushed. Descending requires attention. The surface is slick with dust and sweat, and your balance must be managed deliberately. You place each foot with intention, knees bending slightly to absorb impact. At the bottom, the air feels thicker, heavier, with the combined heat of bodies and stone. You pause for a breath longer than usual, letting your heart slow just enough. No one speaks. Pauses like this are understood, unremarkable. You take hold of the rope again. The fibers feel rougher than they did earlier, stiffened by sweat and dust. They bite into your palms immediately. You adjust your grip, finding a position that distributes pressure without sacrificing control. The count comes. You lean forward, feeling your weight shift, muscles engaging in practiced sequence. The stone moves reluctantly, then slides. The sound it makes is familiar, grounding. It confirms that effort is still translating into motion. As you climb, the heat feels more oppressive. It presses down without variation, without mercy, without intention. There is no breeze here. The air remains still, as if holding its breath. You feel your pulse in your ears now, a steady thud that matches your steps. Your vision narrows slightly, edges softening. You blink, focusing on the immediate space ahead, on the ramp, on the stone. This narrowing is not alarming. It is expected. The body is conserving. You reach the platform again, ease the stone into place. Your arms feel heavy as you release the rope, as if gravity has increased. You shake them gently, encouraging blood flow. The sensation returns slowly, tingling and warm. For a moment, you stand still, looking at nothing in particular. The brightness makes it difficult to focus on details. Everything appears equally important and equally unimportant. This is what midday does. It removes hierarchy. Shade and light become irrelevant distinctions. Everything is exposed. Everything is worked equally. Inside you, something mirrors this flattening. Emotions that might have surfaced earlier, irritation, pride, resentment, have been smoothed out by heat and repetition. What remains is a steady, neutral endurance. You are not thinking about the gods now. Height still matters, the structure still rises, but the meaning assigned to that rise feels distant, abstract. What occupies you instead is the immediate reality of effort, the simple truth of moving weight from one place to another. The gods can wait. They are patient. They have built their patience into stone. The overseer's voices continue, calm and unchanged, threading through the brightness. Their words land softly, absorbed by the same heat that absorbs everything else. You listen without listening. Another stone waits. Another ascent lies ahead. You step forward, hands lifting to meet the hot, rough surface once more. Under the sun, at its highest point, distinction fades. There is only brightness, weight, and the quiet work of enduring it. The pause arrives without ceremony. It is not announced with a call or a signal that rises above the others. The counts simply loosen, stretch farther apart, then fall away. Movement slows, not stopping all at once, but thinning like a crowd dispersing at the end of a long passage. Stones settle where they are, ropes slacken and are set down carefully, coiled with the same economy used to pull them. You step aside with the others, following the quiet gravity of habit toward a patch of open ground where shade is thin and uneven. It is not enough to cool you, but it marks the place where bodies gather without lifting. You lower yourself to the ground slowly, knees bending with caution. The earth is warm beneath you, holding the heat of the day without apology. When you sit, your muscles protest faintly, stiff from repetition. You let the sensation pass before shifting your weight. Around you, others do the same. Bodies arrange themselves with small adjustments, finding positions that require the least effort to maintain. Some lean back on their hands, others rest forearms on knees, heads bowed slightly. No one stretches dramatically. Sudden movements would waste what little reserve remains. A basket appears, set down between a few of you. It contains bread, flat and coarse, its surface cracked from baking. The loaves are broken rather than sliced, torn by hands that know how much force is necessary, and no more. Pieces are passed without comment. You take one. It is dense, heavier than it looks, its edges rough against your fingers. The bread smells faintly of grain and smoke. When you bring it to your mouth, it resists at first, requiring a firm bite. Your jaw works slowly, deliberately. The texture is dry, almost gritty, but familiar. You chew without hurry. The bread absorbs saliva reluctantly, softening only after patience. Each movement of your jaw feels heavy, as if even chewing must be rationed. You swallow carefully, aware of the dryness in your throat. A jug of water is passed next. The clay is warm to the touch, its contents no cooler. You tilt it toward your mouth, letting a measured amount flow in. The water tastes of earth and sun, but it eases the tightness in your throat. You drink just enough to feel functional, then pass the jug on. No one speaks. Breathing is audible though, a shared sound that rises and falls gently around you. It is not synchronized, but it overlaps, creating a low, steady presence. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm is slow now, deeper than it was during work. You feel your heart gradually settling, its pace easing as the immediate demand on your muscles lessens. Sweat continues to run, though more slowly. It drips from your chin, darkening the breadcrumbs that fall to the ground. You notice how close everyone is, bodies arranged within easy reach, yet how little contact there is. Proximity without intrusion. You feel the heat radiating from the person beside you, a quiet warmth that blends with your own. Shared effort has made individual boundaries less rigid, but not irrelevant. Someone shifts position, exhaling with a sound that is almost a sigh. It is not dramatic enough to invite comment. It simply exists, an acknowledgement of fatigue rather than a complaint. You swallow another mouthful of bread. The effort feels oddly significant, as if even nourishment must be earned through patience. Your stomach accepts it without enthusiasm, already occupied with managing heat and exertion. Time behaves differently here. Without movement to measure it, without counts or ramps or resistance, it stretches again, loose and unstructured. You do not know how long the pause will last. You do not need to. The sun remains overhead, though its position has begun to shift in ways you feel more than see. The heat is still intense, but it no longer increases. It has reached a plateau, settling into a steady pressure that seems permanent. Dust clings to your skin, now damp and darkened. When you wipe your face with the back of your hand, you smear it rather than remove it. The sensation is oddly grounding. You are marked by the day in visible ways. Around you, others finish their bread at different paces. Some chew longer, conserving moisture. Others swallow more quickly, eager to be done with the effort. No one judges these choices. Efficiency takes many forms. The jug comes around again. You take another small drink, just enough to keep your mouth from sticking when you breathe. The water does not cool you, but it reminds your body that replenishment exists. You pass the jug on. The silence deepens, not because anything is being withheld, but because there is nothing necessary to add. Words would only describe what everyone already knows. The heat, the fatigue, the waiting. You become aware of the sounds beyond the circle. The distant scrape of a sledge being repositioned. A voice calling out counts for another group, still finishing a task. The faint cry of a bird somewhere overhead, sharp and brief. These sounds drift through without demanding attention. They belong to the same environment, the same ongoing process. Your muscles begin to stiffen as they cool slightly in stillness. You shift your weight, rolling your shoulders gently, flexing your hands. The movement is small and controlled, just enough to prevent complete rigidity. The bread sits heavily in your stomach now, a dense weight that promises energy later rather than immediately. It is not meant to refresh you, it is meant to sustain. You think briefly about the efficiency of this pause, how it is long enough to keep bodies functional, but not long enough to invite reflection. The system understands balance. Too little rest breaks bodies, too much invites thought. This pause occupies the narrow space between. Someone stands, testing their legs before committing fully. They sway slightly, then steady themselves. Others follow, rising in stages, allowing blood to redistribute. You wait a moment longer, letting the warmth return to your joints before pushing yourself upright. When you stand, the world tilts briefly, then settles. You blink, focusing on the familiar shapes around you. The ziggurat rises above, unchanged, its surface is bright under the sun. The ramps await. Breathing deepens again as bodies begin to move. The shared sound of inhalation and exhalation grows more pronounced, overlapping as people reposition themselves, retrieve ropes, check sledges. The silence persists even as motion resumes. It is not broken by this shift, it simply stretches to accommodate it. You pick up your rope once more. The fibers feel stiff in your hands, roughened by sweat and dust. You roll your shoulders, settling them into place. Your grip tightens naturally. As you step back into position, you are aware of the others around you doing the same, each breath aligning with the work ahead. No one complains. Complaining would require energy better spent elsewhere. The pause has done what it was meant to do. The work continues, carried forward by shared breath. measured movement, and the quiet understanding that endurance is most efficient when it remains unspoken. Movement resumes without any need for agreement. Your hands close around the rope again, fingers finding their places as if guided there by memory stored somewhere below thought. The fibers press into familiar grooves in your palms, settling where the skin has already learned to endure. You do not test the weight, you do not measure the distance. The body has accepted responsibility for these calculations. The count arrives, soft and even. You lean forward. The stone answers in the only way it knows how, resisting briefly, then yielding. The sledge slides. The sound it makes confirms that everything is functioning as intended. Wood against earth, rope under strain, breath moving steadily in and out. Lift, step, step again. Hold, place. The sequence unfolds without commentary. Your mind observes it from a distance, detached, almost curious, but not involved. It is no longer needed for decision-making. The body has absorbed the pattern completely. Your legs move with an economy that would be difficult to explain if asked. Each step is placed where it needs to be, neither too long nor too short. The knees bend just enough to absorb strain. The ankles adjust to changes in surface without conscious correction. Balance is maintained without deliberation. You notice that your thoughts have become sparse, appearing only briefly before dissolving back into sensation. When one does linger, it feels out of place, like a voice speaking during a rest. When silence would suffice, the work does not require interpretation. It requires continuation. The ramp feels familiar beneath your feet, its slight irregularities mapped now into muscle memory. You anticipate them without realizing you are doing so. Your body shifts weight before the ground demands it. This foresight saves effort. Effort saved is endurance gained. Sweat continues to run, but you are less aware of it now. The discomfort it once brought has been folded into the background, a constant rather than an interruption. The heat remains, pressing down steadily, but your body has adjusted its expectations. It no longer hopes for relief, it simply functions within the conditions provided. As you climb, you notice how little attention you pay to the height now. Earlier, it carried meaning. It suggested hierarchy, distance from the ground, proximity to something abstract and elevated. Now it is simply a change in angle. Another variable the body has learned to manage. The stone feels no different from the last one. Not because it is the same, but because difference no longer registers as important. Weight is translated directly into motion, bypassing evaluation. You reach the platform and ease the stone into place. The motion is precise without being careful. Care implies hesitation. This is confidence built from repetition. The stone settles. You release the rope, return. The descent feels automatic as well. Feet place themselves. Knees flex. The body compensates for gravity without instruction. You trust it to do so. Trust is efficient. At the base, another stone is already waiting. You step into position without looking around for confirmation. The rope is lifted, hands close, grip adjusts minutely. The count arrives again. Lift, step, place. The repetition does not dull the senses so much as refine them. You notice small things now, details that would have been lost earlier. The way the rope fibers twist slightly under tension. The way the sledge responds differently depending on the moisture of the ground. The faint change in sound when the stone crosses from packed earth to ramp. These observations do not become thoughts. They become adjustments. The body incorporates them without explanation. You realize distantly that this is how instruction truly happens here. Not through teaching, not through correction, but through doing the same thing until variation no longer requires awareness. The work teaches itself. The overseer's voices continue, steady and unchanging, but they feel less directive now, more like markers than commands. They confirm what your body already knows. When they speak, they do not introduce new information. They simply align the group's rhythm. Your breathing remains deep and controlled. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. The pattern has become so ingrained that it continues even when you are not aware of it. Oxygen arrives where it is needed. Carbon leaves without fuss. The muscles in your back ache, but the ache has softened into something diffuse and manageable. It does not spike or demand attention. It exists as a constant presence, a reminder of effort rather than a warning. You think briefly about how little of this day you will remember later. Individual stones will blur together. Specific placements will vanish. What will remain is the impression of movement, of sustained effort without interruption. This thought does not trouble you. Memory is not required for tomorrow's work. The body will still know what to do. Another stone is placed, another descent follows, another ascent begins. The ziggurat continues to grow, though you do not measure its growth. The change is too incremental to register moment by moment. Only when you pause, when your eyes lift briefly, do you notice that the horizon has shifted slightly, that the structure occupies more of the sky than it did before. Even then, the observation is fleeting. The sun has begun to drift from its highest point, though the heat remains. Shadows have not returned in any meaningful way. The light is still direct, still flattening, but something in its quality has softened. You feel it as a subtle easing rather than a visible change. Your body responds to this too, adjusting pace, redistributing effort. You do not consciously decide to move differently. It happens on its own. Lift, step, place, return. The words, if spoken, would feel redundant. The sequence no longer needs labeling. It exists as motion, pure and unexamined. You notice how little you care about finishing a cycle now. There is no sense of completion at the end of a placement, no relief when a stone is set. The satisfaction that might have accompanied earlier efforts has been replaced by neutrality. Each action is valuable only insofar as it leads to the next. This neutrality is not emptiness, it is efficiency. When a stone is slightly misaligned, your hands correct it without thought. When the rope slips, your grip tightens instinctively. When someone beside you stumbles briefly, your body compensates, adjusting tension to keep the load stable. None of this is acknowledged. It does not need to be. The system absorbs minor disruptions without comment. You become aware faintly of how much of yourself has been given over to this pattern. Not surrendered unwillingly, but allocated. Thought has been reassigned, attention narrowed, emotion flattened into something functional. There is a quiet relief in this surrender. The world has become small enough to manage. Rope, stone ramp, breath. You are aware in a distant way that this narrowing will not last forever, that when the day ends, thought will return, filling the space left behind. For now, though, it is absent, and its absence is useful. Another stone waits. You step forward again, hands rising, body aligning with the familiar demands. The count arrives, though you barely register it. Lift, step, place. The work continues, smooth and unbroken, carried forward by a body that has learned more than the mind ever could. At this height, the structure feels closer without feeling familiar. You move along its edges and ramps as you always have, yet the ziggurat remains distant in a way that has nothing to do with space. Its surfaces rise beside you, above you, beneath you, but never toward you. It receives what is brought and offers nothing in return. No signal of acknowledgement, no sense of completion. Just mass layered patiently upon itself. Another stone reaches its place. You guide it forward, easing its weight into position with the same practiced restraint. The sledge scrapes once more, then stops. The stone settles, its underside meeting brick and packed earth with a dull certainty. The contact is final. It will not be moved again unless something goes wrong far beyond your concern. You step back, releasing the rope, your hands lower, tingling faintly as circulation returns. You shake them once, then let them hang at your sides. The stone remains where it has been set. It does not adjust, it does not test its balance. It does not care that you have just given it hours of your strength. It has no mechanism for noticing such things. From where you stand, you can see how the structure absorbs effort without trace. Individual stones disappear into the larger shape almost immediately. Their edges align, their surfaces blend, their uniqueness erased by accumulation. What was once a distinct burden becomes part of an indistinguishable whole. You realize that this has always been the intention. The monument is not built to record who touched it. It is built to endure. Endurance requires forgetting. Anything that remembers too much becomes fragile. You descend the ramp again, body adjusting automatically to the change in angle. The movement feels slightly heavier now, fatigue settling deeper into muscles that have been working without pause. The ache is familiar, a low pressure rather than a sharp warning. At the base, the air feels thick, weighted with heat and dust. You inhale slowly, letting your lungs expand fully before stepping back into position. Another stone waits, identical in its indifference to the last. You place your hands against it, feeling its warmth. The sun has baked it thoroughly now. Heat radiates into your palms, dulling sensation at the points of contact. You adjust your grip, spreading pressure, minimizing friction where you can. The count comes. You lean forward, adding your weight to the collective effort. The stone moves. The ramp accepts it. The structure waits. As you climb, you glance briefly toward the face of the ziggurat rising beside you. Its surface is marked by seams where stones meet, by faint variations in color and texture that reveal the story of its construction to anyone trained to look. You are trained to look, though not taught to read those stories aloud. You know which stones were placed early in the season, when the clay was cooler and the work less relentless. You can see where repairs were made after settling caused cracks. You recognize areas where the slope was adjusted slightly to correct an earlier miscalculation. None of these details point back to you or anyone else individually. They point only to the process itself, recorded in material rather than memory. The structure does not look back. It does not acknowledge the careful placement of each stone, the countless adjustments made by hands like yours. It does not reward precision with beauty or haste with praise. It simply grows, absorbing effort the way the earth absorbs rain, drawing it downward and spreading it evenly. This indifference is not cruelty, it is function. If the monument were to respond, if it were to react emotionally to the labor invested in it, the work would slow, expectation would enter the process, disappointment would follow close behind. Instead, the ziggurat remains silent. You place another stone higher than the last. The view shifts again, the city flattening further beneath you. From this vantage, individual movements below are harder to distinguish. People become shapes rather than figures, patterns rather than persons. You wonder briefly if this is how the gods see it. The thought passes without weight. Speculation does not change the task at hand. You step back from the placement, making room for the next movement. Another group approaches, their stone already in motion. The system continues without interruption, overlapping efforts blending into one continuous flow. You descend again, muscles protesting slightly more each time. The protest remains contained, manageable. You have learned how far you can push without consequence. At the base, you pause just long enough to swallow, clearing dust from your throat. Sweat drips from your chin, darkening the ground before being erased by passing feet. Nothing you leave behind persists here. The next stone is larger, its edges less forgiving. You test its balance briefly, applying pressure to gauge how it will behave on the ramp. It does not offer clues. You adjust your stance instead, preparing to compensate. Hands close. Grip tightens. The rope lifts. The count arrives. You lean forward, feeling the familiar surge of resistance. As the stone begins to move, your shoulders engage fully now, muscles burning slightly as they bear the strain. Breath deepens, steady and controlled. As you climb, the heat feels less aggressive, though it remains intense. Something in the light has shifted again, imperceptibly. The sun is no longer directly overhead. Shadows are beginning to lengthen, just enough to register at the edges of your vision. The structure does not respond to this change. It remains unchanged by time of day, by weather, by the steady passage of labour. Its purpose is fixed. You reach the platform and ease the stone into place. The movement requires careful coordination now, fatigue making precision more demanding. You slow slightly, not out of caution, but necessity. The stone settles. You release the rope. For a moment you stand still, looking at the surface of the ziggurat beside you. It rises in steps, each tier receding upward, drawing the eye toward a place you will never occupy. The upper levels remain distant, reserved for ritual rather than labour. You feel no resentment toward this separation. It has been present from the beginning, built into the structure itself. The division of roles is reinforced with every stone raised. You turn away and descend again. The pattern continues, smooth and unbroken. Stone after stone, effort flows upward and disappears into mass. Your contribution becomes indistinguishable from that of others, merged into something larger and less personal. There is a strange comfort in this erasure. To be noticed would be to be evaluated. To be evaluated would be to risk falling short. The monument's indifference frees you from that burden. You are required only to continue. Another stone waits. You step forward, hands lifting once more. The rope tightens. The count begins. The ziggurat receives what you bring without comment, without memory, without looking back. It happens without announcement. The stone slides into place, and something about it feels slightly wrong. Not wrong enough to stop everything. Not wrong enough to draw attention. Just enough to register as resistance where there should be ease. The underside catches unevenly. The angle is off by a fraction too small to see and too large to ignore. You feel it before anyone speaks. The rope stills. Your hands remain where they are, tension held but not increased. The pause stretches just long enough to confirm the problem exists. No one reacts outwardly. No one sighs. No one raises a voice. A measured instruction arrives, soft and precise. Back. You respond immediately, easing the stone away from its resting point. The movement is controlled, careful not to introduce a new imbalance while correcting the first. The sledge slides backward with a muted scrape. Dust lifts and settles again. Another instruction follows. Turn. You shift your weight and guide the rope, changing the angle by degrees rather than steps. The stone pivots slightly, its mass slow to respond, its friction against the surface resisting adjustment. You lean in, applying steady pressure until it complies. The correction takes only moments. No time is wasted explaining what went wrong. Explanation would not improve the outcome. The system is designed to absorb these moments quietly, folding them back into the flow. Now, you ease the stone forward again. This time, it settles cleanly, its weight distributing evenly across the surface beneath it. The resistance disappears. The fit feels right. The rope slackens. You step back. The entire exchange passes without comment. The error does not linger. It does not stain the work that follows. It is not remembered. You realize how often this happens. Not always with stones. Sometimes with steps taken too quickly, grips placed too narrowly, balance misjudged on a slope worn smooth by use. These moments are small, frequent, and unremarkable. They do not interrupt the work, they shape it. The system expects imperfection. It accounts for it. Your body has learnt this as well. When something resists unexpectedly, you do not panic or force it. You adjust. When fatigue causes your footing to slip slightly, you correct without comment. When the rope bites too sharply into your palm, you shift your grip before damage accumulates. Each correction is a lesson absorbed without instruction. You move again, returning down the ramp, muscles responding to gravity with practiced caution. Knees bend just enough. Feet place themselves where traction is strongest. You do not think about balance, you trust it. At the base, another stone waits. It is narrower than the last, its edges sharper. You notice this immediately, not as a concern, but as information. Your hands will need to spread differently. The rope will behave slightly differently under tension. You take this into account without forming words. Hands close, grip adjusts. The count arrives. You lean forward, feeling the stone resist, and then yield. The ramp accepts it. The climb begins again. Halfway up, the sledge catches briefly on a shallow ridge in the surface. The resistance is subtle, but unmistakable. You feel it in the rope, a change in vibration, a hesitation in movement. You do not stop, you lean slightly to one side, redistributing weight. Someone beside you mirrors the adjustment without looking. The stone shifts just enough to clear the obstruction. The motion smooths out. No instruction is given, none is needed. The correction is absorbed by the collective, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. The stone continues upward. You reach the platform and guide it into place. The angle is clean this time. The stone settles without argument. You release the rope and step back, hands tingling faintly. These small moments accumulate quietly throughout the day, shaping the way the work unfolds. They do not disrupt the rhythm, they refine it. You begin to sense how much of the structure's stability depends not on perfect execution, but on constant adjustment. The monument stands because countless small errors have been corrected before they could compound. Precision here is not the absence of mistakes. It is the ability to respond to them without drama. You descend again, fatigue now woven deeply into your movements. It does not slow you, but it does require more frequent correction. Your steps are slightly shorter. Your grip tightens more often. Your breathing deepens. You notice these changes without judgment. They are simply part of the day's progression. At the base, you pause briefly, rolling your shoulders, flexing your fingers. The joints protest softly, a reminder that the body has limits. You acknowledge this by adjusting posture, not by stopping. Another stone is prepared. This one sits unevenly on the sledge, its weight distribution slightly off. You feel it the moment you apply pressure. The rope pulls at an angle that does not align with your stance. You compensate before the count even finishes. Feet reposition. Hips shift. The imbalance lessens. The stone moves. As you climb, the sun continues its slow descent, though the heat remains. Shadows have lengthened slightly, but they do not offer relief yet. They merely mark the passage of time in a way that feels almost symbolic. The structure beside you holds its shape, each tier firm, each surface bearing the marks of countless corrections. These marks are subtle. A trained eye might notice slight variations in alignment, tiny adjustments that reveal where human judgment intervened. To anyone else, the ziggurat appears solid and intentional, its lines confident and unwavering. The corrections that make this possible are invisible. You place another stone, it sits well, you step back. The overseer's voices continue their measured cadence, adjusting pace and placement as needed. They do not draw attention to errors. They do not praise corrections. Their role is to maintain flow, not to assign meaning. You begin to feel like part of that flow yourself, less an individual actor and more a component responding to pressure and release. When something pushes back, you yield or redirect. When space opens, you fill it. This alignment brings a quiet sense of efficiency. You descend again, retrieve another stone, repeat the sequence. Each time, your body refines its responses. Movements become smaller, more economical. Corrections happen faster, often before the error fully manifests. The work feels smoother now, not because it is easier, but because resistance has been anticipated. The system, both external and internal, has learned its limits and adjusted accordingly. As you guide yet another stone into place, you notice how little emotional weight these corrections carry. There is no frustration when something goes wrong, no relief when it is fixed. The absence of drama is intentional. Drama consumes energy. Energy is better spent lifting. You step back, hands resting briefly at your sides, breath steady. The stone remains where it is placed, indistinguishable from those beside it. The structure accepts it without comment. You turn and move again, ready for the next adjustment, the next small error, the next quiet correction. The work continues, shaped not by perfection, but by the steady, practiced art of responding without pause. The light begins to slant, but the heat does not leave with it. Instead, it lingers, trapped in stone and dust, released slowly, as if the day has decided to hold on. The sun lowers by degrees too small to matter, and the workyard does not respond with relief. What changes is not intensity, but texture. The brightness softens slightly, edges returning where midday had erased them, yet the weight of the hours remains. Fatigue does not arrive as a single sensation. It layers itself carefully. First in the calves, where each step up the ramp feels a little longer than it should. Then in the thighs, where lifting no longer feels like a decision, but a negotiation. Later, in the lower back, where tension settles and refuses to be redistributed completely. You notice these changes without surprise. They are not alarms, they are signals, familiar ones, telling you that the day has entered its longest stretch. The part that does not end sharply, but thins out, extended and quiet. Your movement's slow, but not dramatically. No one calls attention to the change. The system adjusts without comment, counts, stretch by fractions. Pauses lengthen, just enough to prevent collapse. Nothing is announced, nothing needs to be. You grip the rope again. The fibers feel harsher now, their roughness more apparent against skin that has grown tender beneath dust and sweat. You tighten your hands, then relax them slightly, finding the balance that allows control without tearing. The stone moves when you lean. It always does, though sometimes more reluctantly now. The resistance feels heavier, not because the stone has changed, but because your body has less to offer without complaint. The slope feels steeper than it did earlier, even though it is the same. The distance to the platform stretches subtly, as if space itself has slowed. You breathe deeper to compensate. Inhale, hold, exhale. The pattern remains steady, but the effort behind it increases. Each breath feels earned now, drawn deliberately into lungs that have been working without pause. The air feels thick again, dust-filled and warm, settling in your chest before leaving reluctantly. Sweat cools slightly as the sun shifts, but it does not dry. It clings to skin and cloth, a damp layer that never quite lifts. When a faint breeze moves through the yard, it carries the smell of earth and bodies and worked stone. The scent is heavy, but not unpleasant. It is simply present. You place another stone. The action requires more focus now, not because precision has become harder, but because your margin for error has narrowed. Fatigue demands attention in small ways, asking you to check your footing, to slow your movements just enough to remain accurate. You respond by becoming quieter inside. Thoughts retreat further, making room for sensation. You feel the rope more clearly, the angle of pull, the slight shifts in weight from those beside you. You feel the ramp underfoot, its worn surface, familiar but less forgiving now that your legs tire more quickly. The ziggurat looms beside you, unchanged by the passage of hours. Its surfaces glow softly in the angled light, bricks catching shadow in ways they did not at midday. The structure looks more defined now, its edges sharper, its shape clearer. You notice this without assigning meaning to it. The monument continues to receive what is brought to it. Stone after stone settles into place, absorbed into mass. The growth is incremental, almost invisible, yet undeniable when viewed over time. Time itself feels altered now. It does not move forward so much as stretch. Moments feel longer, not because anything new is happening, but because the body registers each one more clearly. Every step, every pull, every placement carries a slightly heavier awareness. This is not boredom, it is density. The afternoon spreads out, wide and quiet, offering no clear markers, no bell signals progress, no change in task introduces novelty. The work remains the same, and that sameness becomes its own landscape. You descend again, joints protesting softly as they absorb impact. Your knees feel thick, movements slightly less fluid than before. You adjust by shortening your stride, lowering your center of gravity. These changes happen without conscious planning. At the base, you pause longer than earlier, letting your heart slow. The pause does not feel like rest. It feels like preparation. Another stone waits. You approach it with measured steps. Your hands rise, grip forming naturally. The stone is warm, but no longer startlingly so. The heat has become familiar. Another constant. The count comes. You lean forward and the stone slides. The sound it makes seems louder now, not because it is, but because everything else has quieted. The yard feels hushed, voices fewer, movements more deliberate. Even the overseers speak less. Their instructions remain precise, but they intervene less often. The system is running smoothly enough to require minimal adjustment. You climb again, the ramp feeling longer than before. Each step demands more intention. You feel your calves tighten, your thighs burn, your back stiffen. The sensations overlap, layering rather than replacing one another. You do not wish them away. Wishing requires energy. Instead, you accommodate. You lean slightly differently. You engage muscles more evenly. You allow the strain to distribute rather than concentrate. At the platform, you ease the stone into place. The movement is slower now, careful without being hesitant. The stone settles. You release the rope. You stand still for a moment longer than usual, hands resting on your thighs, head angled downward. Sweat drips from your nose, falling to the ground below. The sound is soft, barely audible. You straighten gradually, rolling your shoulders back, letting tension shift. The ache remains, but it no longer surprises you. It has become part of the rhythm. Looking out across the yard, you see others moving in similar ways. No one is rushing, no one is idle. Everyone exists in this extended moment, stretched thin but unbroken. The afternoon seems to resist conclusion. The sun continues its slow descent, shadows lengthening now in more noticeable ways. They stretch across ramps and platforms, offering brief patches of relief that move almost as soon as they appear. You step into one momentarily, feeling the temperature drop just enough to register. Then it passes. The shadow moves on, sliding away, leaving warmth behind. The relief was temporary by design. You return to the base of the ramp again. Another stone is prepared. The routine continues, steady and unchanging. Your body feels heavier now, as if each part carries the accumulated weight of the day. Arms lift more slowly, legs respond with less enthusiasm. Breath deepens further, each inhale filling lungs that feel slightly less elastic. Still you move. The system does not expect freshness, it expects persistence. As you pull again, you notice how little remains of any sense of beginning. Morning feels distant, almost unreal. The pause for rations feels like something that happened to someone else. What exists now is this long, thinning stretch of effort, the afternoon that seems to extend without promise of release. You do not resent it. Resentment would require comparison, a vision of something different. There is nothing different here. There is only continuation. Stone moves, ramp rises, platform waits. The light softens further, but the day holds on, refusing to end quickly. You adjust your stance, tighten your grip, and lean forward once more, carrying the weight of the afternoon as steadily as you carry the stone. The sound comes out wrong at first. It is not quite a laugh. It does not rise or open fully. It slips out sideways, shaped by dry lips and a throat that has been busy all day, doing other things. A breath escapes someone nearby with a faint, uneven huff, and for a moment it is unclear whether it is irritation or something else. Then another breath follows it, similar, slightly altered. You realise slowly that it is amusement. Someone has said something. You did not hear the words clearly, only the tone, flat, measured, almost careless. The kind of remark that does not demand attention, but offers it quietly. The way shade offers itself late in the day. The stone continues to move. You lean forward with the others, rope tight in your hands, weight shifting into familiar channels. The ramp rises ahead, unchanged. Yet something subtle has loosened in the space between bodies. Another huff of air escapes, this one unmistakably intentional. It is cut short almost immediately, as if the person producing it reconsidered halfway through. Laughter, even quiet laughter, requires energy. It must justify itself. This one does. The comment passes through the line without being repeated. No one asks what was said. No one needs clarification. Whatever it was, it landed gently enough to be shared without explanation. You feel it register in your chest, not as joy, but as release. A slight easing of pressure. A momentary widening of the narrow space your attention has been occupying all afternoon. The work does not pause. Hands remain on rope. Feet keep moving. The stone advances with its usual reluctance. But the rhythm shifts by a fraction, almost imperceptible, as if breath itself has found a more comfortable pattern. You glance sideways briefly, not turning your head fully. The person beside you keeps their eyes forward, mouth set in its usual line. The corners twitch once, then still. That is all. The sun has dropped lower now, its light angled enough to draw long shadows across the ramps. They stretch and slide beneath your feet, moving steadily as the minutes pass. Some of them offer brief relief, a cooler patch that crosses your ankles or calves before slipping away again. You step through one as the stone moves upward. The temperature shift is subtle but noticeable. It feels like permission rather than comfort. Another quiet sound emerges from the group. This one is unmistakably a breath held too long and released unevenly. Someone has nearly laughed and caught themselves. The effort of restraint is visible only in the slight tightening of shoulders, the way a head dips for a moment, as if to hide the expression forming there. You recognize the motion because you have made it yourself before, on other days, under similar circumstances. There is something efficient about this kind of humour. It does not build, it does not escalate. It flickers briefly, then fades, leaving behind only a faint warmth. It does not demand response. It does not linger long enough to interrupt the work. You reach the platform and ease the stone into place. The movement feels marginally lighter, not because the stone weighs less, but because your body has found a momentary distraction from its own fatigue. The rope slackens, you release it. As you step back, another remark drifts through the air, this one clearer, though still quiet. Something about the gods, something about how high they insist on living. The comment is delivered without bitterness, without challenge, just observation, dry, accurate, a few shoulders shift. Someone exhales sharply through their nose. The sound is almost a snort, but restrained enough to pass as breath. You feel your mouth respond before you decide to let it. The corners lift slightly, a movement so small it barely qualifies as expression. The muscles involved seem surprised to be used for anything other than holding tension. It costs very little to allow this. That is why it happens. Despair would require imagination, a picture of something better or worse than this. Imagination consumes energy, and energy is scarce now. Dry humour, by contrast, feeds on what is already here. It uses the absurdity of repetition, the quiet imbalance between effort and recognition, and turns it just enough to make it bearable. The ramp descends beneath your feet as you return for another stone. Your knees complain softly, joints stiffening as they absorb impact. You adjust your pace slightly, conserving what remains. At the base, another stone is waiting. Its surface is rough, edges chipped in places. You place your hands against it, feeling the familiar texture. The heat has eased slightly now, no longer pressing down as aggressively. Sweat still clings, but it cools more readily. The count comes. You lean forward. As the stone begins to move, someone behind you mutters something else. This one you catch more clearly. A comment about how the stone seems heavier today, or perhaps lighter. The ambiguity is intentional. It invites agreement without requiring it. You hear a soft response, barely more than a breath. Must be the air. The line does not break into laughter. It does not even fully acknowledge the exchange, but something passes between you all, subtle and shared. The stone continues upward. Your breathing remains steady, but it feels easier now, as if the lungs have been given permission to expand fully again. The ache in your back is still there, layered deep, but it no longer dominates. It has been joined by something else, something lighter. You reach the platform and guide the stone into place. The movement is precise, unhurried. The stone settles. You release the rope. As you step back, you notice how the light has changed again. The sun is lower now, shadows longer and more defined. The ziggurat casts a broad shadow across part of the yard, its shape cutting a sharp line between brightness and relief. Some of you will pass through that shadow on the next ascent. Some will not. The difference feels less important than it might have earlier. Another remark surfaces. This one's so quiet it almost disappears into the sound of movement. Something about how the gods must be tired of hearing the same prayers every day. The comment is followed by silence, then a single, unmistakable sound, a short, breathless laugh that escapes before it can be stopped. It is immediately smothered, turned into a cough or a clearing of the throat. No one looks. Looking would draw attention. Attention would require explanation. Explanation would sap the moment of its efficiency. You feel the echo of the sound in your chest, a gentle vibration that lingers longer than expected. It does not energize you. It does not inspire. It simply eases the weight slightly, redistributing it the way a small correction redistributes a load. The work continues. Stone after stone moves upward. The pattern remains intact. The overseer's voices continue their measured cadence, unaffected by these brief exchanges. They do not intervene. They do not discourage it. Perhaps they do not even notice. Perhaps they do, and see no reason to stop it. You descend again, retrieve another stone, repeat the familiar motions. Your body remains tired, deeply so, but something inside has shifted. The fatigue feels shared now, acknowledged without being spoken. This shared understanding costs little. It does not demand agreement or solidarity. It simply exists, like the shadow cast by the structure as the sun lowers. As you pull again, you allow yourself another small smile, one that barely moves the mouth at all. It feels almost accidental, like a reflex, triggered by proximity rather than intent. You let it happen. It passes quickly, leaving behind no obligation to repeat it. That is what makes it sustainable. The day continues its slow movement toward evening, stretched thin, but still intact. The stones rise, the structure grows, bodies endure, and in the quiet spaces between breath and effort, these small, tired jokes survive. not because they are powerful, but because they are efficient enough to last. The light loosens its grip slowly. It does not drop away or cool all at once. It softens, thins, shifts direction. The heat that has been pressing down all day begins to lift, not leaving, but redistributing itself into stone, into ground, into the thick air that still clings to your skin. The sun lowers enough now that it no longer sits directly above you, no longer pins every movement in place. Shadows stretch again, long and deliberate, reclaiming space they abandoned hours ago. They slide across ramps and platforms, pooling briefly at the edges before moving on. You step into one without planning to, and the temperature change registers immediately. It feels like a hand lifted from your shoulder. The work continues for a while after this shift. Stones still move, ropes still tighten and slacken, counts still arrive, measured and even. Nothing stops simply because the light has changed. The system does not respond to comfort, it responds to completion. But something else begins to happen, subtle and unmistakable. Movements slow further, not from collapse, but from precision. Each placement takes slightly longer, each correction made with greater care. Fatigue has deepened to the point where haste would cost more than it saves. You guide another stone into place, hands steady despite the tremor that lives beneath the surface now. The stone settles cleanly. You step back, breath deep and heavy, chest rising and falling with effort that no longer needs to be hidden. The Ziggurat casts a broad shadow now, its shape stretched across the yard like a quiet declaration. The upper tiers catch the last direct light, glowing briefly while the lower levels retreat into shade. The structure looks taller at this hour, not because it has grown, but because contrast has returned. You stand at the edge of a platform and look down, not to measure progress, but because your body has paused long enough to allow it. The city below is louder now, though not in volume. Sounds carry differently in the cooling air. Voices from distant streets drift upward. A donkey brays somewhere. Metal rings against clay. Life beyond the workyard resumes its own rhythms as the day turns. The overseer's voices grow fewer. They still speak, but less often, intervening only when necessary. The flow has slowed enough to regulate itself. Everyone senses that the day is approaching its limit, though no one names it. You descend again, knees stiff, feet careful on the worn surface. The ramp feels longer now, not because it is, but because your body has spent itself evenly across the day. There is no reserve left to draw from. What remains is allocated carefully. At the base, a stone waits. You approach it without urgency. The heat has left its surface now, replaced by a warmth that feels almost gentle. You place your hands against it, noting the change. The stone feels heavier, not physically, but because your strength has thinned. The count arrives. You lean forward, feeling the familiar resistance as the stone begins to move. The sound of the sledge scraping along the ground feels louder now in the cooling air, sharper, more distinct. Each step is deliberate, each breath deep. As you climb, the shadow of the Ziggurat crosses you completely. The temperature drops noticeably. Sweat on your skin cools, sending a faint shiver through your shoulders and spine. The sensation is surprising after hours of relentless warmth. You do not slow. You reach the platform and guide the stone into place. The movement takes effort now, more than it did earlier. Your arms shake slightly as you ease the weight forward. You brace, adjust, and settle it carefully. The stone rests. You release the rope and step back, hands dropping to your sides. They feel heavy, fingers stiff and slow to respond. You flex them once, then let them be. For a moment, nothing happens. The yard holds still, not frozen, but quiet in a way that suggests transition. A few more stones are placed elsewhere. A rope is coiled. A sledge is nudged into a resting position. Then a voice carries across the space. Not a count, not an instruction, just a short phrase, delivered evenly, without emphasis. That is all. The words do not announce an ending, they grant it. You feel the shift immediately. Not relief exactly, but release. The tension that has been held carefully throughout the day begins to loosen, spreading outward from your shoulders, down your arms, into your legs. Your posture changes without your permission. Your spine curves slightly as the need to remain upright fades. You step away from the stone, leaving it where it rests. There is no final adjustment, no lingering touch. The stone does not require reassurance. It will remain exactly as it is until tomorrow or until someone else moves it. You trust this without thinking. Around you, others do the same. Ropes are set down, not dropped. Tools are placed where they will be found again. No one rushes to leave. Sudden movement would feel inappropriate after such sustained control. Breathing deepens collectively. The sound of it fills the yard. A low, steady presence that replaces the earlier rhythm of effort. Inhale, exhale. The pace is slower now, fuller. You begin to walk away from the structure, not as a group, but as individuals moving in the same direction. The ground feels different beneath your feet, cooler, firmer. Your legs feel heavy, each step requiring more attention than it did at the start of the day. As you pass beneath the shadow of the Ziggurat, you glance up briefly. The upper tiers glow faintly in the last light, edges catching fire for a moment before dimming. The structure looks complete in this light, even though you know it is not. Completion is an illusion created by distance. You do not carry the stone with you. You do not carry the rope. What you carry is the residue of effort, settled into muscle and bone. It moves with you now, shaping your gait, your posture, the way you hold your head. The city receives you back gradually. The sounds of evening gather around you as you leave the yard. Footsteps echo differently now, sharper against cooling earth. Voices grow more numerous, though still subdued. Smoke thickens as fires are fed for cooking. The smell of food drifts through the air, more noticeable now that the work has released its hold on your attention. Your hands ache as blood flow returns more fully. The sensation is intense at first, then dulls into a steady throb. You welcome it. Pain of this kind means the day has ended. You pass others who worked elsewhere, their bodies marked by different kinds of labour. Some glance at you, some do not. Recognition exists, but it does not demand exchange. As you walk, you realise how little urgency remains in you. The day has taken what it required. What remains belongs to the evening. You do not look back at the Ziggurat as you leave, not because it is unimportant, but because it does not require your attention now. It will still be there in the morning, unchanged by your absence, waiting patiently. The sun slips lower, touching the horizon. The heat fades into memory, replaced by a cooler air that settles gently against your skin. Work has ended, not with relief, but with permission. You accept it quietly and continue walking, leaving the stone exactly where it is, trusting that it will be waiting when you return. The city feels narrower on the way back, not smaller, just closer. Walls seem to lean in slightly, as if they have been waiting all day to reclaim the space you borrowed in the morning. The streets funnel you gently inward, away from the open yard and its long ramps, back toward rooms built to hold bodies at rest. Your footsteps sound different now, heavier, less deliberate. Each step lands with a faint echo that travels up through your legs and settles in your hips. The ground is cooler, and you notice it immediately, the packed earth releasing the heat it stored all day. The temperature change reaches you slowly, seeping upward through sandals, ankles, calves. Dust lifts with each step and clings again just as quickly. It has followed you from the yard without effort. It coats your skin, your hair, the creases of your clothing. It sits at the back of your throat, faint but persistent. You swallow, feeling it shift, then settle again. The ache moves with you. It does not spike or fade, it hums. A steady presence that fills the background of your body, like a low sound you stop noticing only because it never leaves. Your shoulders carry it. Your lower back carries it. Your hands, now empty, still feel the memory of weight. You pass doorways where lamps have been lit, small points of warm light that spill into the street. Shadows gather between them, thick and quiet. Inside, voices murmur, not loud enough to pull you in, just enough to remind you that the city has other rhythms beyond labour. Someone rinses a jar nearby, water splashing softly against clay. The sound carries in the cooling air. It triggers a response in you, a faint awareness of thirst, of skin coated in salt and grit. You turn down a narrower passage, one that smells faintly of damp earth and old smoke. The walls here are close enough that your shoulders nearly brush them if you drift too far to one side. You keep to the centre out of habit, steps measured even in fatigue. Your space waits. It is not grand. It does not need to be. Mud brick walls hold the day's coolness unevenly, patches of warmth lingering where the sun struck earlier. The reed mat lies where you left it, its surface already marked by the shape of your body from countless nights before. You set down what little you carry. The motion is slow, careful. Sudden movements feel unnecessary now. Water waits in a jar near the wall. It has been sitting all day, absorbing the heat of the room. You lift it with both hands, feeling the weight shift as the liquid moves inside. When you pour some into a shallow basin, it splashes softly, darkening the dust at the bottom. You dip your hands first. The water feels almost hot at first contact, then cools slightly as your skin adjusts. You rub your palms together, watching the water cloud as dust lifts away. Fine grit settles at the bottom of the basin, a pale sediment that traces where you have been. You bring water to your face next, cupping it carefully. It runs down your cheeks, your neck, carrying dust and sweat with it. You wipe your eyes, blinking as the sting fades. The relief is subtle but immediate. Your hair releases dust slowly, grains clinging stubbornly before yielding. You rinse again, patient, there is no hurry. As you wash, the ache makes itself known more clearly. With the work finished, nothing distracts from it now. Your muscles throb in quiet waves. Your joints feel thick, resistant to quick movement. When you straighten after leaning over the basin, your back protests, a dull pressure that settles once you stand still. You breathe through it, inhale slowly, exhale fully. The rhythm calms the sensation without removing it. You are not trying to erase the ache. You are learning how to exist alongside it. You rinse your arms, watching rivulets of water trace paths through grime. The skin beneath looks darker now, marked by sun and dust. Small abrasions stand out, shallow scrapes that sting briefly when water touches them, then quiet again. You do not examine them closely. They do not require attention. They will close on their own. The water grows murkier. You set the basin aside and pour the used water out onto the ground outside. It disappears quickly, absorbed without ceremony. The dust will return tomorrow. Inside, the air feels cooler now that the day has released its hold. You sit on the mat slowly, lowering yourself with care. Muscles tighten, then ease as you settle. The mat bends beneath you, familiar and accommodating. You stretch your legs out in front of you, flexing your feet gently. The movement sends a brief flare of sensation through your calves and knees. You pause, then continue, letting the stiffness ease gradually. The city around you has quieted further. Sounds still exist, but they are muted, softened by evening. A voice carries briefly from a neighbouring room, then fades somewhere. Someone laughs softly, a sound less restrained now that work is done. You do not feel the need to respond. Hunger returns slowly, making itself known with a dull insistence rather than urgency. Your stomach tightens slightly, reminding you that the bread from earlier was not meant to satisfy, only to sustain. Food will come. You trust this. For now, you sit, Your hands rest on your thighs, palms open. They feel strange without the rope, fingers still curved as if expecting resistance. You straighten them deliberately, stretching each one in turn. The joints protest faintly, then accept the movement. Dust still clings to the creases of your skin. You brush some of it away, but not all. It feels pointless to remove every trace. It will return soon enough. The ache settles deeper now, no longer sharp in any one place, but spread evenly through you. It feels almost stabilizing, a reminder that the day has passed through your body and left its mark. This sensation will follow you into sleep. You lie back on the mat slowly, arranging yourself carefully. Your back meets the surface, spine aligning with practiced precision. The mat whispers beneath you, reeds shifting slightly. You place one arm across your chest, the other at your side. The ceiling above you is dark, uneven. Shadows move faintly as light from outside flickers and fades. You watch them without focus, eyes half-lidded. Breathing deepens again, slower now, fuller. Each breath seems to reach further into your body, loosening what has been held tight all day. You're aware of the Ziggurat even now, not because you can see it, but because it occupies space in your understanding of the city. It stands where it always does, unchanged by your absence, its stones cooling in the evening air. It holds the effort you gave it without comment. This thought does not disturb you. If anything, it reassures. The work is contained there, embedded in brick and mortar. You do not need to carry it further. Outside, the city settles into night. Fires dim, voices lower. The air cools incrementally, brushing against your skin through the open doorway. Dust has come home with you. It rests in your hair, on your skin, in the folds of your clothing. It has travelled the same path you have, from yard to street to room. It will stay with you through the night, a fine layer that marks you as someone who moves stone today. You do not mind. The ache remains, steady and familiar, like a background sound that does not demand attention, but never quite disappears. You close your eyes, not in search of sleep, but because they no longer need to be open. The city holds you quietly now, and you allow yourself to be held. The night does not arrive all at once. It settles gradually, like dust after a long disturbance, filling spaces that daylight kept apart. The city exhales again, though more deeply now. Its sounds loosening into something slower and less deliberate. Fires dim, footsteps soften, voices thin into murmurs that do not carry far. You lie on the mat and feel the weight of your body spread into it. The ache is still there. It has not retreated with the light. It sits in your shoulders, your hips, your hands steady and patient. It no longer feels like resistance. It feels like proof. A record written into muscle rather than memory. You shift slightly, testing how much movement the night will allow. Your back responds with a faint tightening, then relaxes as you settle again. The mat creaks softly beneath you, reeds adjusting to the shape they already know. Above you, the ceiling holds the last traces of warmth. The air moves slowly, brushing your skin without urgency. Somewhere outside, an insect begins its steady rhythm, a sound so repetitive it barely registers as sound at all. Breathing deepens, not because you decide it should, but because the body recognizes that it is allowed to. Each inhale travels farther now, filling spaces that were compressed all day. Each exhale leaves without effort, carrying with it heat, dust, the last sharp edges of strain. Your hands rest where you left them, fingers still slightly curved. Remembering the rope, you open them slowly, stretching each one in turn. The joints resist faintly, then give. The sensation fades into the background. Thoughts arrive, but they do not demand order. They drift in fragments. Light on stone. The sound of rope sliding. A dry remark spoken without lifting the head. The brief relief of shade crossing your feet. None of it arranges itself into a story. It does not need to. Outside, the city continues its quiet adjustments. A door closes gently. Water is poured. Someone coughs and clears their throat. Life persists in small, contained movements, careful not to disturb what the night is building. You feel the presence of the Ziggurat, even now. It does not intrude. It does not loom. It exists as a certainty rather than an image. Somewhere beyond the walls, beyond the narrow streets and sleeping rooms, it stands as it did when you left it. Stones cooling, mortar setting, ramps dark and still. It will rise again, not suddenly, not dramatically. It will grow in the same way it always has, through small additions that barely register from one day to the next. You will not notice its growth directly. You never do. Only occasionally, when standing at the base or looking up at an angle, will you realize that something has changed. This understanding brings no urgency. The Ziggurat does not need your attention tonight. It has taken what it required from you already. It will wait. Your eyelids grow heavy, not as a command, but as a suggestion. You let them close halfway, then fully. Darkness settles behind them, familiar and unthreatening. The ache shifts back, moving deeper, spreading evenly. It no longer flares in specific places. It hums, a low vibration that fills the background of your awareness. You do not try to escape it. Escaping would require effort. Instead, you allow it to exist. Sleep does not arrive like a door closing. It arrives like a process, continuing without you. Your thoughts thin further, losing edges, blending into sensation. The rhythm of your breathing becomes the dominant feature of the world. In, out, in, out. Each cycle slightly longer than the last. The city fades, not into silence, but into distance. Sounds still exist, but they no longer reach you with clarity. They pass through the edges of your awareness without settling. You feel the coolness of the air against your skin, the faint residue of dust that remains even after washing. It does not bother you. It is part of the day that has followed you here, refusing to be entirely removed. The gods, if they are watching, do not intervene. They never do. They remain where they are, higher than you, distant and unmoving. They do not reward endurance. They do not punish fatigue. They simply persist, much like the stone, much like the structure built in their name. This indifference does not feel hostile. It feels consistent. Sleep deepens slowly, layer by layer, just as fatigue did earlier. First, awareness of your surroundings fades. Then awareness of your body softens, though the ache remains as a distant echo. Finally, even the sense of effort dissolves. There is no dream at first, just darkness, just rest. Somewhere in the city, someone turns over on their mat. Somewhere else, a fire collapses inward, embers shifting quietly. The night holds these sounds without comment. You do not mark time anymore. Minutes and hours lose distinction. The body takes what it needs without asking permission. Muscles loosen incrementally. Breath remains steady. If a dream comes, it is vague. Stone, light, weight, movement without resistance. Nothing sharp enough to wake you. The shadow of the Ziggurat stretches across the city, even now, though you cannot see it. It grows imperceptibly longer as the night advances, covering spaces you will walk through again in the morning. You sleep beneath that shadow without knowing its shape. You sleep knowing that when you wake, the structure will still be there, altered in ways too small to notice immediately. You will return to it. You will place your hands against stone again. The system will resume without needing explanation. For now, none of that matters. Sleep holds you, indifferent but reliable, much like the gods themselves. And the city, the stone, the unfinished monument, all of it waits quietly while you rest. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S., Rich Davis, and Leslie Schofield. Sleep well.